Dear ladies and gentlemen, compliments to you for actually having stayed with us until now. Just another statement from myself, and this is going to be at a personal level. Thank you for all those who have contributed. Today we had a lot of speakers, very competent speakers, very interesting topics that have been discussed. A lot of different perspectives have been shown. This has been rather interesting, and I think this has been also interesting for you. Thank you for those who have organized the event at the state representation here. Thank you also to our organizational partners, the region Grand Est, and also Benelux Union, the French embassy who helped us, and also the House of the Dutch Provinces who helped us to organize the event today. Thank you for all of you who contributed to this event. I would not like to attempt to summarize the entire day, but perhaps just a very subjective consequence that I would like to bring forward. I think it has been rather consensual, the way we have discussed all of the ideas that have been brought forward, but very passionate ideas to move across borders. This is what I rather liked. Also, the fact that it was self-evident that we all want climate-friendly mobility, borderless mobility. This is something that we all agreed upon. We didn't even discuss that. We also found that there is a European transport network that still has a lot of gaps and missing links. And I'm very pleased that after tomorrow, at least some of those missing links are going to be closed, at least on paper, and hopefully they are also going to be closed in practice. We need a good European network that is resilient, but that also has redundancies. And we need interoperability. And I would like to say at that point, the stories that we have heard today, that some of the stories we have heard today are so much of yesterday that we shouldn't even talk about that anymore. Some of the things that have existed for 50 years, some of the problems that have existed for 50 years should be solved. And if the EU doesn't do it, the border regions should take care of that. Our region and the region of Grand Est should tackle all of these challenges. There was large consensus in the sense that we would like to have multimodal opportunities, we would like to have better interconnectivity, we also would like to reduce technical barriers, and we also talked about transport modes that are usually not talked about, walking or cycling. This is also something where we have solutions already available. I think cooperation is a large keyword. We don't always have to regulate everything. We can just cooperate across borders and create a European solution. We also heard a lot about what is not yet working, the ticketing. We know all of that, and I still have to say that with our technological opportunities, we have a simple chance of overcoming these barriers, which used to be very difficult, shouldn't be difficult anymore. We should just do it. We shouldn't just say that it is difficult, we should just do it. And we also had a panel discussion about innovation, and where we also talked about the fact that transport and mobility are a relevant economic factor with regards to the creation of jobs in the automotive industry, but also in the industry that produces railway products, for example. Also, the cycling industry is a very important economic factor in this discussion. It was also a pleasure to talk about the European night trains, and I am very pleased to hear that this rather old European system has come back into our realities, into our cities, and that they are replacing air traffic. We don't just see transport as a service, but also as a mobility solution. And it shouldn't just always be your own vehicle. You can also share your vehicle with new technologies. All of this is possible. Thank you all for being here until now, and I think we have heard a lot of good concepts, ideas, future-proof mobility concepts, and I think it is up to us to implement all of these systems and to reduce all of these barriers that we talked about, and to work towards a reality that will be borderless in terms of mobility, to work together across borders. And what we heard also is that we don't have a lot of time in terms of climate change, climate production. We don't have a lot of time left, and therefore we have to act. We have discussed to a sufficient extent. Let us act and let us reduce barriers and borders, and let us work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot quote every speaker today because we had a lot of speakers. I just wanted to say something. Wanted to thank Alexander, who's a very important partner for this forum. Last year we talked about hydrogen during our forum. It's a very important topic for our regions, and now the topic was transport and mobility. And I think that this topic is even more at the heart of the daily life of our citizens. And we can see what's happening nowadays between France and Luxembourg, for example. It's a great example. We have 120,000 people, French people, traveling every day to work in Luxembourg. There will be more in a few years, and I've seen the difficulties that this implies on a daily basis. When you live at the border for healthcare, schools, and so on. A lot of problems that doesn't enable our citizens to live fully as a European citizen. This mobility challenge is a big one because we've been fighting for this for years. We've been fighting for free circulation of citizens, and because this mobility was not green, we are now facing a problem. We know that the transport sector contributes a lot to CO2 emissions. So now we need to solve this problem. Because we need more mobility, but we need a greener mobility to protect our planet and the future of the next generations. It's the main challenge here that raises a lot of difficulties, a lot of other challenges. We need to develop carbon-free transport. Carol Delga, president of French regions, talked about creating the equivalent of Airbus for trains in Europe. But carbon-free transport, it's also bikes, for example. This sector will create 200,000 jobs in France, for example. And we need to have a bike industry in our regions. And we've talked about it this morning. We also need carbon-free road transport, and it's a big challenge for the automotive industry. We've talked about it this morning, and we need to be cautious on this one. But if we are only talking about infrastructures, then we need to also to talk about infrastructures and also about investments and subsidies. The investments are not enough. They are not appropriate for our goals. And if we are not inventing new way of financing the transport sector, and I'm talking here as a president of a French region, waiting every day for the letter of negotiations that the French Prime Minister wants to send to every president of regions. I feel that we are not going to reach our goal if we are not inventing new ways of financing it. And I'm talking here to the representative of the European Bank of Investment. I was talking about it earlier with my colleagues here. 7 years ago, Grand Est was behind in terms of digitalizations, but now fiber cables are everywhere, even in the smallest village. So we can come up with new subsidy system with coming from public authorities with low emission labels or different tickets, but we need this to overcome obstacles and to overcome bottleneck effects. Sometimes we can see cars that cannot move on the highway because there are too much traffic. Same with some trains on a daily basis. There's also an obstacle that we need to overcome at the industry level. The EU needs sovereignty. We just rediscovered a few months ago what sovereignty means. We need a powerful industry. And I know that the EU was against the fusion of some French and German companies because of competition law. But now the competition is not an EU competition, it's a global competition. And tomorrow maybe these Chinese companies, these giant companies will come on our market and take the market. So we need sovereignty in this sector. I was here last year for this forum on hydrogen because I was vice president of the region Grand Est in charge of ecological transition. In the meanwhile, I became the president, and I just wanted to tell you some words. I wanted to tell you that this challenge of transborder transport is a big challenge for us. We have a lot of borders, and workers that cross a lot of workers that cross borders every day live in our region. So we have these difficulties, and we face this challenge regarding mobility to Luxembourg, Belgium, and so on. And we need to raise our voice for these border regions, because they are not taking all the profits they can from this from being a border region. And there are a lot of difficulties because someone who's working in a country but wants its children to go to another school, or because someone wants to send his child to a university that is in the other country, but closer to its French university, for example. So it's one of the difficulties that Prime Minister, for example, talked about a week ago. There's so much frustration and obstacles in these border regions that I think we need to think about it. Maybe we should work together and start discussions at the EU level, because the difficulties we face in our territories are the same in other territories, in other border regions. We need a special status for these border regions because they are facing difficulties and obstacles that we've talked about during previous roundtables. For sustainable mobility, it's one of the priorities in our region. We are acting on this, and for example, we are working with Baden-Württemberg, Rhénanie-Palatinat, and Saar, and we've invested millions of euros for infrastructures and also for vehicles to be able to have a fluid traffic, because before that we needed to change trains when we crossed the border, and soon there will be direct connections between France or east of France, our region, and the three German regions that I just quoted. And we are also investing in carbon-free transport. I'd like also to thank Catherine Folkman here. She played an important role in the modernization of the transport sector in Strasbourg. And now we have this connection going to Cologne. So it shows that it's possible. It's possible to have such connections. And it's difficult. The regulations are not the same, but we still need, I think, to tackle this issue in the next years. We also have another issue regarding the future of this of the transport sector. Like, how can we reuse the small connections that have been left out because they didn't make any profit? How can we use the vehicles of the future because they will the cost of their use will be less, so we can reopen these lines that were left out. We have also this project Mobilux towards the future of transport. So we all have projects in our regions, innovative projects that enables us to think about the future of our mobility for greener mobility. And of course, if we work about it together, then we can just have more efficient transport. And this kind of transport could be revolutionary in the future, so that not every people in our regions need to converge to a city to be able to take a train and to avoid the bottleneck effect. So that's what I wanted to talk about. And I'd like to thank you for the quality of our discussions. Thank you for the organizers. And I'd like also to invite you to next year to meet us here on another topic. And thank you for inviting us in this building. We can also talk about other topics. Last year was hydrogen, this year transport, maybe next year could be bioeconomy. It's an essential topic and we need to talk about it. So that's it. I wanted to thank you for your participation, and let's meet again next year, and I hope you will travel back to your regions with fresh ideas. Thank you very much.
Dear Deputy Prime Minister, cher Georges, dear Ministers, dear President, dear members of European Parliament.
Chers participants, chers députés, je vais être brève. Bon, je suis banquier, je vais parler d'argent. On peut commencer par parler d'argent, finir par parler d'argent, et là je vais parler d'argent. Parce que le prochain sujet de ce forum pourrait être comment est-ce que l'on peut financer tout ce dont on a discuté aujourd'hui. Et c'est pour ça que je suis ici. Merci encore de m'avoir invité. Je pense qu'il y a 3 raisons pour accélérer la transition du secteur du transport. Première raison, le transport est d'une importance fondamentale pour l'économie, l'emploi et l'égalité. Le transport soutient toute notre société, toute notre économie. Deuxième élément très important et nouveau aussi, la crise énergétique. Se concentrer sur l'efficacité énergétique, c'est un élément très important qu'il ne faut pas ignorer. Enfin, troisième point, le secteur du transport est dans une mauvaise posture pour ce qui est des émissions de gaz à effet de serre. Comment est-ce possible que tous les secteurs diminuent leurs émissions de gaz à effet de serre tandis que celui du transport augmente ses émissions? On parle de Fit 55, et des objectifs pour 2050, et qu'on a ces situations, alors on n'a pas de temps à perdre, il faut agir vite.
Talk about 4 elements. First of all, EU Climate Bank and Transport Lending Policy. You know that European Investment Bank, European institution and a bank, is also now the EU Climate Bank. That means that we invest 72 billion euros each year, and certainly last year it was 72.55 billion euros in Europe and also 10 billion euros outside of Europe. Of this amount of money, it's a huge amount of money, we have invested 36.5 billion euros in 2022 in green projects. That is 58.3% of the total lending. And of course, transport lending is also a very, very important part of this investment. I can tell you that in average, we invest 11 billion euros each year in transport. And I can tell you that certainly in transport, 80% of this amount is now going to green and climate projects. And we have invested, because it's not all Europe is here around the table, but France, Belgium and Germany, we invested in 2022 14 projects for a total amount of 3.3 billion euros. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that, and that was already mentioned, sustainable transport systems, safe, accessible and efficient are the key words also for us, for the bank. And we have, and that is very important to close this first element, EU Climate Bank and Transport Lending Policy, we have approved in July 2022 a new lending policy about transport. And I can tell you that also for the bank, bicycles are also an element in our new lending policy. And of course, it's totally aligned with the Paris agreements. It's totally with the taxonomy that we don't invest anymore in fossil fuels, in projects that are not in line with the taxonomy and the climate and the Paris alignment. That is for us very clear. Second point that I want to make is the investment in infrastructure. We must continue to invest in the building, maintaining and upgrading infrastructure. That is also for the future very, very important. And we do that. And I have some examples here also in the region, interurban rail in France, also in rail. And I think that it's already mentioned, we need to focus on bringing the European multimodal transport infrastructure up to date to ensure the functioning of the EU internal market. It was also mentioned, ticketing system and so on, competitiveness of the EU and the support, the transition towards smart, sustainable, efficient and safe mobility. That is, ladies and gentlemen, all the things that we finance also in the Rhine region. We have a lot of investments, and one of the most important ones, also when you look to the amount of money, 800 million euro loan agreement was signed in December 2022 to the borderless transport system through Canal Seine North Europe. I think that is also an example that hopefully convinced you that the European Investment Bank is doing utmost to make what was discussed here today a reality. My second point is innovation investments. That is also for us very, very important to invest in innovation. And the most delicate point is when you talk about innovation and you go to a banker and you say, I have something new, very innovative, then of course the banker will say, what is the risk? And when the risk is too high, you don't find money to your innovative project. And that is also why we take a very important role, because we can take higher risk than a normal, entre guillemets, a commercial bank. But scaling up, we need high-end technology and so on. But also one message that is also very important that I want to make in this discussion is that only half of the technologies necessary to implement the green transition are already established. That means that 50% of the technology is not yet known or is not yet invested. That is also, of course, very important to underline. And we invest, and we have a special projects, what we call the venture debt loan. That is a very interesting instrument when you are very innovative. And we have some examples, the Wingcopter last mile delivery in Germany, also new technologies with using drones to support decarbonization of transport, or some examples where we have put our money in. Now, before concluding, urban mobility is, of course, a very, very huge problem or issue. Was also when I listened to the discussions. I think, and you mentioned mobility as a service, intelligent transport systems, and so on. I'm convinced that the use of public transport systems will increase the next time, the next years, and that's the reason why we are in favor to support what you are doing, dear Minister, dear President, in your region. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I think that we all support sustainable transport. Is there someone in the room that say, no, I don't know, I don't support sustainable transport? Of course, everyone supporting sustainable transport. But there are some very important issues that we must tackle as soon as possible, and we must tackle that together. Together, that means the government, the regions, with the plans, with the improvement, also the industry and the companies, the private companies, and also, last but not least, the banks, commercial banks, for sure. They have a lot of money, I can tell you. But we, as European Investment Bank, a combination of European institution and a non-profit bank, can and must support the public policies, the decisions that were taken by ministers, by regions, and so on. And I can end to say, you can count on us. And we have not too much money, but we have the money that you need to make your projects reality. Thank you.